Hello everyone. Today I'm going to begin the second part of the THOTH series that I started and thought I completed. It's been at least 6 or 7 years ago. But I'm receiving the energy from the THOTH Extreming to return to that series that was done for portal members and to add, shall we say, a chapter or more on Thoth in the New Earth form. Not just him, but the whole panorama of his work there. In general, of course. But something that might help one to get the feeling of the New Earth, as well as how a master being such as Thoth opens the scroll to that world system too, for us here and now. And so I'm going to begin by reading to you from some original material I wrote. Well, I'm quoting back as far as 1991, but I put this together for my website, I think it was 2006. So I begin by reading this to you as sort of an introduction to the whole thing. Numis Om is the name given to me by Thoth to call Earth's double of etheric energy that is the staging ground or outer membrane for the developing new Earth star realm. We are currently building the hologram of the new Earth. As the hologram develops, so it evolves the membrane of the Numis Om, which in turn transfers these frequencies and sacred geometries into the developing new Earth star. Now, I would pause a moment here because when I wrote this, I was not aware yet of the Pyramidus radius matrix, which is the matrix here in our current Earth world, and yet creating a subdimension of that is the platform here that brings us into a teaching learning mode to accept the membrane of the Numis Om, which is the first stage on the other side, the first stage in the new Earth. So you have the Pyramidus radius here and the Numis Om there, and there is a connective field running between the two that is developing. Numis Om means gathering of the many aspects of the holy word or tone in one breath, one movement of being. The merging seed of the blue ray of Earth with the violet ray of Numis Om creates the blue-violet or indigo ray flame of the new Earth. The temple of Aramu, divine firebird, and the Numis Om in volume 1, 1997 of Temple Doors. So I'm reading now in this article, I'm going back to 1991. No, I'm sorry, 1997. Thoth asks us to return to the first information he gave me concerning the New Earth star. This appeared in volume 2, 1991 of Temple Doors. I had received some understanding of the planet's movement toward that evolution previously, but in the Temple Doors volume 2, 1991, he gives the name New Earth star for the first time and a more detailed description of the actual condition. I reprint that information here for the reader's convenience, as it must be read again first to truly understand what Thoth is saying now about that dynamic. And so now we go back to 1991. We are approaching a gate of completion when the etheric double of this planet, which has been developing on the inner planes for some time, will be ready to receive its first major contact point with its twin world, our elemental Earth. This first revolution of synchronization will occur on January 11, 1992. And then I go back again in Volume 4, 1985 of the source. Information was given on what was then called Aletheria, Earth's double of etheric energy, which the Egyptians referred to as the Ka. The Egyptians used this term to refer to any etheric double, such as that of humans and animals, not particularly in describing the double of the Earth itself. This etheric image of Earth is growing like a crystal in a sunlit cave, refracting the light of the planet's inner harmonics, transforming the pollution and violence it interacts with the etheric plane, and straining out the bilge of our confused karmic patterns, thus producing the purest elixir of our true arc of illumination, the new Earth star. The completion of the new Earth star will not take place until this elemental earthen sphere merges with its supernal double. The planet's Ka is no longer Aletheria, for it has progressed into a more defined and rarefied state, now known as Numis Om. Now, I want to pause a moment and say that when I'm given these terms, I'm given different ones for different stages of things. So Aletheria was running a particular program, shall we say, of developing this double, which is really not just an etheric double. That's kind of a way of understanding it, but it's something that's evolving. It's not staying the same as. And as it evolved in that particular platform, THOTH gave it the name of Aletheria. Then, when it progressed to a more serious platform, shall we say, it became Numis Om. When the blue ray of our Earth is fully integrated with the violet ray of Numis Om, there will burst forth into a glorious blue-violet flame, the Iris Eye. This is the bonding flame of the new Earth star, when our world in its supernal form will join at the apex of the Metatronic spiral through the eye of the needle, the Iris Eye. Through what Solara, a starborn, refers to as the healing of Orion, we as an inspirited world will be able to depolarize our consciousness so that we can enter the Isis Eye, where all polarities are one. So this is yet another eye that we're being told about. Eye of Ra, Eye of Horus, Eye of, what else do we have? Isis, and now Iris Eye. And I'm still quoting from. That is one within the other, and I'm not even sure which one this is. It's either 1997 or 1991. I was allowed to visit this PreWorld and saw rivers of blue substance flowing like curves of taffy, suspended in the air of a blue sky. I was inside what could only be described as a flying van with a guide who glided us through one of these rivers, explaining that it was a semi-fluid, semi-gas of special protein compounds from which properties of the world were being constructed. Below the rivers were strips of greenery, like floating terrariums. We then flew through a cloud, and below suddenly appeared solid land. You know, as I'm reading this, it kind of sounds like Avatar, doesn't it? You know, the floating islands of land, and then zooming through this flying bus, but it really was more like a spacecraft, I guess, and seeing all of this below. It was a beautiful plain with a few large cliffs near the bluest river I've ever seen. Homes were built alongside the expanse of lapis water. They were widely spaced, giving the impression of a frontier atmosphere. I almost expected to see buffalo thundering upon the horizon at any moment. The buildings, however, were refined and spacious, similar to what might be found in a rustic upper-class residential area. I saw no people, but rather seemed to feel their presence. I knew that by comparison to a normal inhabited planet, this world had few residents at this time. Now, looking at this, especially in retrospect, from coming from 2017 back to as I was saying, looking at it from 2017 back to 1997 or 91, I'm putting it into a greater perspective from all that I've received since this time that I wrote this original material. I don't think that it's incorrect, but I see it as being something that we have to understand is being projected. In other words, in the New Earth Star realm, as I say a little further down in this, we're not building stuff with hammer and nails and saying, okay, we're going to do, let's build this house here and there. It's working with thought forms. So I was viewing that, and I was viewing it through my thought perspective. And I'm not saying that it entirely changed what was really there. But you see, what is really there has to do with the interaction you are experiencing. You see, it's all really quantumized. It's totally quantumized reality. So let's say two people in the New Earth, okay, they're experiencing their own world of the New Earth. It's not drastically different, but there are some things each is experiencing that are slightly different. In fact, even now, we do that here on this earth, but it's so minute, we don't catch it, we don't recognize it because we're in our own little space and we think everybody else is seeing and experiencing what we are. So we're still experiencing that. But in the New Earth Star, it's a much greater difference. And so two people, they're different and they're walking along in the New Earth and they see one another, because there's a reciprocity that opens the window, the portal for them to see one another. Now you see, if they hadn't had a reciprocity, I'm calling it that, they wouldn't have seen one another. They would have walked right past one another, wouldn't have seen each other, wouldn't have been there. But if they had that feeling for one another, that vibratory connection, even if they'd never met before in this current experience, they would come into contact. So their two bubbles, their two membranes of New Earth experience would kind of not merge entirely, but, overlap so that they could kind of be in this sort of like the Pisces Vesica, where you have the little in-between part. And so they'd be in that little in-between part together, and things would look a little different to each of them because there'd be a little of this and a little of that. And then if you have a community of people that are coming together, well, you have a much greater synchronicity and scope of awareness of these membranes that are connecting. So you see, that's the way it works there. So when I'm looking out of this window and I'm seeing all these things down there, you have to realize that I'm seeing it from my membrane experience of the dimension. But there are similar aspects to it all that everyone is experiencing and taking into their individual, I'm calling it a membrane or a bubble form. Okay, let's continue here with the written material. The totemic animals of the New Earth Star who are aiding us to receive that supernal state of self are the dolphin, the unicorn, and the dove. Now, that was the end of that quote. So I'm going back to 2006. I wish to stress that in Numis Om, as well as in the New Earth Star realm completed, all that is formed through thought, or really as a sense beyond how we think in the body. The houses I saw were not built with hammer and nails, but through what the psychic mediums of the late 18th century and early 19th century called ectoplasm, being gathered and organized through supraluminal thought forms. I guess I got that right finally. Masters of Tibet and India create certain small objects in this fashion, in this dimension. So can one who is disincarnate and within the realms of the pure spirit being. So in 2006, I asked of Thoth, what is the temple of Aramu like? He replies, it is a pure energy streaming light divine from the font of Metatron, which assumes a specific pattern within my Akasha field. In this pure streaming of light divine, so I set certain forms into place for the souls who were attracted into my Aramu temple due to their own soul harmonics, which resonate with my field and that which I represent universally. These forms, ectoplasmic creations, are basic and will morph into various attitudes and detail for the individual soul interacting with them. See, that's what I was just saying, actually, but it's coming back here. However, there is a basic flow and pattern which I present here, which helps to stabilize and open attracted souls to a greater level of their realization in the Numisome. So what he's saying is, in this introductory temple of the Aramu, that is Thoth, and remember, he's not the only fish in the ocean up there, but we're talking about Thoth's entry point, because he seems to be very much one of the major, facilitators of this whole thing for us. So in that temple, he is creating more of a stable condition. So those that are drawn to his temple will feel that stability that they know and recognize as the Thothic energy. Now, that doesn't mean that all these souls that are going into that temple, have never even heard of Thoth, but they have experienced his soul in many lifetimes where they connected to him in various ways. So they're drawn to that temple. Now, maybe you're drawn to more than one temple, but essentially you're going to go to the one that calls you the most, because this is a time of entry into this whole experience. And so that's the realm you go into. Now, the term temple does not mean, necessarily a place that has altars and blocks and stones and columns and pyramids. It can form that way in your interaction with it, but it's a state of being. It's another membrane, I guess you could say. So I continue here and I ask, I understand that souls who have transitioned the body here in this dimensional earth do sometimes enter Numisome, and thus those so attracted enter the Aramu temple. How is this selection made? Now, I'm speaking, I want to qualify this because my question is not really clear. What I'm talking about, all souls that are connected to this earth, even if they're not physically here when the ascension occurs, because I'm probably not going to be, and several of us other older people may well not be, we're still going to be going into the Numisome, into the New Earth Star. But I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to souls who have recently transitioned that are already there. In other words, they go directly there even though technically it hasn't been entirely created yet. And it's kind of a catch-22 because if, we're talking about quantum physics. So if you take away the time factor, it's been there forever, So anyway, let's see what Thoth has to say because I can't even remember at this point. So he says, souls who transition your earth dimension may be attracted to any of the astral worlds of earth, where most disincarnate souls go. That's in the meantime before this platform collapses, this whole old earth collapses. However, some are indeed ready to enter into Numisome. In other words, do it now rather than wait until the whole platform has transitioned. One need not be a master being to do so. It is a matter of willingness to surrender to the vibration I call here the Lotus Stock. This stock is a funnel pathway streaming into Numisome. It holds a certain vibration of commitment. When souls feel this pull, many will turn away from it and go elsewhere, as they are simply not yet ready to surrender to its potential. Other souls will find that they can surrender and move into the stalk. The lotus, in this perspective, is the Numis New Earth star. It was also the symbol for Mu, the motherland of humankind on the earth. In the context of Mu, Numis New Earth star is not only symbolic of tranquility, harmony, unfolding love to reach the heart seed, but it is a true living energy form or sacred geometry of heart light. As the soul moves through various stages of the Numis via the temples of the master intelligences, so the number of petals on the lotus will change, as well as the color vibration of the lotus and its associated pure symbols. The soul will at first dwell inside the lotus, and then the lotus will dwell inside the soul. I like that. Okay, so then I ask, can currently incarnated souls interact with Numis and the Temple of Aramu and or other Numis temples of master intelligences? If so, will this interaction benefit them by preparing their souls to possibly choose entry into Numis when they slip the body in this life? And Thoth replies, yes, this is so. However, it is important that the individual realize that wherever their soul ultimately chooses to journey and delight after their current incarnation, it will be a loving experience and right for them if they so believe and trust in the divine balance of the eternal love. Even if they do not enter what we are calling here Numis after this embodiment, attuning to its frequencies of light and love will allow the soul a deeper feeling and embodiment of those frequencies into its incarnating being, so that the whole process of alighting in the astral earth, current earth embodiment, or Numis will become a more graceful and expanded experience of being. And once again, because this is kind of confusing, to say the least, I want to stress that all souls, and I'm sure there are exceptions that decide, or for whatever reason, they don't go to the New Earth. They go somewhere else of a higher world system too. Maybe, there might be nearly master intelligences or something that do that. So I never like to say never, okay? But I'm going to say in almost all instances, the souls that choose the higher evolutionary path will go into Numis into the New Earth star, whether they're currently embodied on this earth or not when this whole so-called ascension process takes place. He's speaking of souls that are leaving now, before all of that they still have a platform here to be able to choose to incarnate in one of the astral levels instead, like they do all the time, basically, except now there's this New Earth portal opening up more for them to be attracted to go through the stalk and be, let's say, the pioneers of the New Earth star experience. But all of this, as I'm speaking, you have to realize we're attaching time to that, or I am, to this statement. And Thoth is trying to help us understand it through that dialogue. But as he states, New Earth already is, because there is no time. And once you slip the body, you're in a far less time. You aren't in a time experience at all. But what you are still in is a magnetic experience. There's a certain amount of magnetism connected to a world system one system. It has an energy that says, okay, there are these astral realms attached to the base platform. This physical life as we know it is the base platform. And so when you leave the body, you're magnetically drawn into one of those astral realms, whichever one kind of works for you. So when there's no platform left, then you have to go to, if you're not ready for the New Earth star, you will be going to a completely different world. Another world system. World system 1. Now, there are big holes in all of this that I don't understand. And Thoth hasn't enlightened me to, or maybe he feels he just simply can't. My little old brain just won't handle it. Because you could say, well, if that's the case, why doesn't time, I mean, when you leave the body, there should be, if it's timeless, then you can move into a state where there is no platform here that's holding you down. So maybe that's the truth. There's a truth to that. But it might have to do with awareness, how much awareness the soul has, that they can move past that magnetic time set and go into another realm where they can freely move through into the new Earth star. All of these things are, floating around there. In any case, this is the material I wish to read to you before we went any further with talking about Thoth and the new temples in the new Earth star.